chronic shame is one of the most complex, corrosive, and immobilizing emotions. It often underlies pain, anxiety, and depression. Shame is like a cancer, like a tumor that grows from the injury of trauma and the wound of betrayal. This interpersonal trauma becomes deeply lodged in the body-mind and then metastasizes, infecting all aspects of a person's life. They include a loss of connection with our authentic, spontaneous self, as well as with our basic sense of goodness, rightness, and belonging in the world. I believe that there are two main sources of toxic shame. The first is when we're traumatized, abused, and humiliated as young children. We experience this as an overall sense of badness. Badness that something is fundamentally wrong with us. The second is the fear that comes from being ostracized from a group. And this can happen at different ages. For a young child, it's as though the only way we can make sense of how poorly we've been treated, how we've been mistreated, especially by those who are supposed to take care, cherish, and love us, is to lay the blame on our own badness. In other words, the way that we try to make sense of this is to somehow assume that we were the cause of that abuse and that shaming and that humiliation. And this allows the child to imagine that they have some small modicum of control in an otherwise incontrollable situation. Of course, these core beliefs are the words and explanations of the adult. So I'm speaking them from the child, but the child, their mind is very different than the adult mind. And for children, it's this primitive internalized deduction that occurs without words, context, or even thoughts. It's just an overwhelming, oppressive sensation of our own badness. But again, at least it gives us some modicum of control, because if we were the cause of it, then somehow maybe we could alleviate some of that shame. The child somehow senses that we need our parents for us to survive. If it's them that are the bad ones, then we won't survive, because we need them for our survival. So better us than them to carry the badness. It is an implicit survival strategy to regard the parent as essentially a good caretaker. This sometimes leads to what's called splitting. That it's like we have one parent who is the bad parent, who is only bad, and the other parent in our mind is the good parent. And so rather than being able to hold them together, they split into those parts. So let's look at the second major cause of shame, which is being ostracized from a group, be it family, colleagues, friends, or peers. Rejection is among the most painful of human emotions. Anyone who has felt the sting of rejection, ostracism, or shunning knows how deeply these experiences sting and how they just rip us apart. And also how long that pain can last. This shame feels like death because in tribal or primitive groupings, if one member is being ostracized for not living up to, not obeying the norms of the group, they may perish. For example, in a member of a primate family group is banished or shunned, they may literally die. And if they're not able to attach to another group, they will simply wither and die. You know, the voodoo death, it's not about putting the needles in the doll. It's about ostracizing that person who's being hexed. And because that's so severe and the body gets so shut down, they may actually perish and die, but again, not by the needles, but by the banishment, and how profoundly that immobilizes us. This social bind makes us particularly vulnerable to shame around the age of adolescence. At this age, peer groups become so vitally important, and exclusion feels like you're dying of shame and humiliation. If you kind of visit your adolescence and your pre-adolescence, how did it feel when you were excluded by high school friends or colleagues or family members? It can just be excruciating for any of us. And you see kids like this, you know, you have one friend and they're your best friend, and then all of a sudden they don't even talk to you and somebody else is their best friend. God, that really, really hurts. It feels horrible. It feels maybe even like death, because again, banishment is about the likelihood of death. I suggest that you might think about, from your current adult stance, what you would want to say to yourself as an adolescent. What you would want to say to reassure her, him, or them that their pain and humiliation won't go on forever, that they will survive it, and that you'll be there for them. So just take some time now, some moments, to envision yourself as an adolescent or as a pre-adolescent. And just what words would you want to say to them? What would you want to tell them? What would you want them to know from your stance as an adult, from your heart, from your being? And see how that feels inside. What kinds of sensations, feelings images or thoughts come up for you, come up in your mind. As you console your adolescent self, consider journaling about these feelings and thoughts and sensations. Whatever the cause of our shame, it is important. No, it's critical to understand that our bodies respond in specific ways to this kind of emotional injury. When we continue to hold these emotional postures of shame, which we'll be talking about now, and the horrible feelings of humiliation will get regurgitated over and over again. So now, how do we break this vicious cycle? Here's an exercise to help working when feelings of shame or humiliation come up. Well, they're there all the time, of course. So the idea is to notice that the content and the corrosive nature of shame, that's also important, but what's really important, and which gives us the way of moving out of the shame, is that shame is something that happens specifically in our bodies. So, if there's somebody facing us, or we're imagining somebody that was facing us, we turn away from their gaze, look away and down, and then we collapse. Our shoulders come forward, and we collapse around our diaphragm, kind of bending forward. But don't go too far, just go a little bit. And then come back up slowly. Slowly, slowly. And notice how you're sitting now. Does your spine feel longer in any way? How does your chest feel? How does your belly feel? So, once more, something comes up around the issue of shame, and we feel what our body wants to do. Our body, again, wants to curve forward, look away, collapse down, and then just holding it there, slowly, slowly coming up, vertebra by vertebra, all the way from your lower back, all the way up to your thoracic vertebra, and till you get a sense of lengthening and also of opening in the chest. Because really, the opposite of shame is pride, authentic pride. So just notice how you experience pride in your body, and that you can go from feeling shame, which is like this, to opening from the shame into extension, into lengthening, and into pride and dignity. Because remember that shame is something that strips away our dignity, and pride is what takes us back to our dignity, to our bodily sense of pride and dignity. So can you feel love for this hurt child, for this shamed or humiliated child? Can you feel love, caring, compassion? And can you also feel that kind of caring and compassion to that adolescent part of you? Because we carry in our bodies all of those baby, child, adolescent experiences in our bodies. And now what we're doing is we're reworking them so that we don't have to be stuck in shame. And because we can never move into life fully when we are in shame, when we're in the posture of shame. So remarkably, when we allow ourselves to feel worse, which is again moving into that posture, and then slowly coming back out from that posture, that we're no longer stuck, we're no longer riveted to shame and to humiliation. So thank you for participating in this very challenging exercise. And again, I want to remind you that you can go to Belarus Neperstek's Healing Trauma audio series because it really also reinforces and helps to move us through these shame experiences that can really help bring you into self-care and self-acceptance.